Yeah, Jason, just take a seat there. How's things?
No, I'm great. I'm great.
Look, basically I thought I'd just go over some of our objectives, some of the things that we need you to do going forward. At around 9, we want Luka to get his first shoot-around in. That's when he generally gets his first shoot-around in, so we're going to need you to be rebounding and passing the ball out to him, so be ready for that. And then at around 12, he does his second shoot-around. You won't need a rebound for that one, but he will need his Jordan 34s, preferably.
I'm sure we can get someone else to rebounds. I thought we were here to talk about, tactics.
Tactics. You didn't watch the playoffs, did you? You did watch the playoffs, I caught you. Yeah, no, basically what we want you to do is make sure Luka gets the ball. Tell Kristaps to get out the way and stop complaining. Yeah, that's probably the extent of it, really.
Let's try and get Luka some help, shall we? I think so. Look, the Mavericks actually had a pretty decent season, excluding the playoffs, which was decent as well, and we'll talk about that briefly. But looking at the regular season, after the first 20 or so games in which people were panicking, the Mavericks had a record of 8-13, somewhere around that range, people weren't putting into context the fact that they were missing players left and right with protocol and with injuries. And once they got pretty much healthy, the remainder of the season, they went 34-17, which was only behind the Suns, Jazz, Nets, and Nuggets. Pretty good company. Very good company for over 50 games of the season once they finally got healthy. And this was led by their offense. That doesn't surprise anyone because when you have Luka Doncic, you're pretty much guaranteed to have a top 5 offense because he's just simply that good. And while they had a top 5 offense for those last 50 games, their defense was still slightly below average, and we need to talk about their defense for sure. And then obviously the playoffs came around. We won't waste too much time on this series. They lost in 7 games to the Clippers. Luka Doncic was absolutely absurd. 36, 10, and 7. He obviously shot well from the field and well from 3. Free throw shooting, yeah, that's a little bit of a concern. We won't go fully into that because I think we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. He shot over 70% from the line this season. He's generally been a decent free throw shooter. He's got nice touch on threes, on floaters, on mid-range shots. There's nothing to suggest this man will struggle from the free throw line for the remainder of his career. But as of right now, that looks like a blip on the radar. What wasn't a blip on the radar was the fact that he averaged 36, 10, and 7. Oh my God, that is absurd. So he put up those numbers. Unfortunately, he was also playing against a robot named Kawhi Leonard and also some pretty good teammates he had, where Kawhi Leonard, he was dropping 40 left and right on just absurd efficiency. The man is a freak. I think all of us acknowledge that, whether you're a Mavericks fan or not. That's a reason why Dallas are obviously trying to get him, or at least Mavericks fans are trying to create that kind of rumor. Newsflash, I don't think that's going to happen. I won't completely puncture your dreams. I do not see it happening, but there's still some definite free agents that you could go after and could make a huge impact. Obviously, there's no 2 Kawhi Leonards, but that doesn't mean you can't make a huge impact, and we're going to talk about that. Before I actually talk about that, if you could drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, that would be much appreciated. I make content like this every single day, and doing so, it just helps out a ton. But before I even get into the free agency, I want to talk about Kristaps Porzingis, because for good or for bad, this man has always been a talking point for pretty much his entire NBA career, and since joining Dallas, he's been one as well, and these playoffs, they were rough. He also did mention a point about him not really getting utilized like a second star, which there is some merit in that. At the same time, if you can't stay healthy, it's kind of hard to treat you like a second star because you're either off the court or getting back on the court and struggling to get back to form. There's a lot of reasons why you can't really be treated like a second star with the career and the couple of years he's had in Dallas. But when he has been healthy, think back to last year, he was incredibly good in the second half of last season. He averaged 26 and 10 post All-Star break. He averaged 30 and 10 in the bubble. And it was looking like, finally, this is actually the best version of Kristaps Porzingis. He's getting to the free throw line. He's aggressive. He's posting up smaller defenders and making them pay. He's popping out for threes and hitting them with consistency. He's grabbing rebounds. He's getting back to his defensive best that he showed in New York. And all of a sudden, this is the guy that could be a second option alongside Luka Doncic. This is an all-star level guy, the way he was playing. There was absolutely no questions about that. Since then, injury, bad form, different situation. It's been rough. With all of that in mind, I think you absolutely do not trade him right now because his value is just terrible. It's rock bottom right now. You've got a chance to rebuild him up, whether you're rebuilding him up to help pair him with Luka Doncic for the remaining future and try to make that work, or you're just rebuilding him to get his trade value up. Either one is a necessity, and you hope he stays healthy in the offseason because regardless of all of these things, that is the major thing. The man can still shoot the ball. The man still has a lot of moves for a 7'3" guy. He still has potential on the defensive end of the floor. He just needs to stay healthy. But in terms of still looking to improve, well, just looking at what they have on their roster right now, they've got some nice contracts. They've got Dorian Finney-Smith, they've got Maxi Kleber, and they've got Jalen Brunson, who are making about a combined $15 million next year. I mean, going forward, that'll be a tricky situation to navigate because Finney-Smith and Brunson will want some money. Those are navigation things for the future. Right now, we're just talking about this year coming up. Then you look on the flip side, Powell and Richardson, who will certainly take his player option at $11 million a year. I mean, he'd be absolutely mad to not take his player option. They're making a combined $20 million, which is a little bit rough. just a tiny bit rough to have those guys making that kind of money. And at the same time, you've also got Tim Hardaway Jr., who is coming out of contract, which leaves Dallas with somewhere in the mid $20 million range. If Tim Hardaway Jr. was to not re-sign, obviously there's the mid-level exception, all those things which I'm not even getting into. I'm looking at the big free agents. I'm looking at guys that can make the huge difference because I'll have faith in the general managers making the right decisions around those signings. But at the end of the day, we all know they need a proper, genuine big free agent to come in this season. Luka Doncic needs at least a all-star level player, someone around that range, because right now, if Porzingis is going to play like that, you don't have anyone at that level. And let's just talk about those free agents right now. I want to start with John Collins. There's a couple of guys that are in that big mold, but I want to start with John Collins, someone who fits this team really well. 3-and-D type guy. He proved a lot in the playoffs in terms of his ability to defend bigs, which is important because obviously Porzingis, that's not his strength by any means. So if you have a Collins at the 4 and a Porzingis at the 5, all of a sudden Collins can take on some of those different assignments. He does have that versatility defensively. He's not exactly the quickest. Your foot speed is a little bit questionable, but at the same time, you got some strength inside. You've got someone who can post up. You've got someone who can pop out. You've got those two are both versatile in terms of their ability to shoot from 3 and to post up and make those kind of decisions. Collins is an elite lob threat, an elite pick and roll player. So him and Luka Doncic, he can set screens. He can attack the rim. Those guys could definitely have a partnership similar to what Trae Young and John Collins have in Atlanta right now. That makes a lot of sense. He's a restricted free agent. It'll be interesting to see what Atlanta do because personally, I don't think they will re-sign him if a team offers him somewhere in that $25 million range. Collins could definitely be gettable, and it makes a lot of sense for the Mavericks. He averaged 14 and 9 on 55, 36, 83 shooting splits in the playoffs, which is good. Those are good numbers. You'd probably want him to be around the 16 to 18 point per game region. I'm sure Luka will get him good looks. I'm sure they'll continue to get him good looks. They'll post him up. They'll do all of these things with him. I will say, in terms of concerns, I'll just preface this. He is someone that did struggle creating his own shot when Trae Young went out. When Trae Young wasn't there to spoon feed him the ball, he struggled quite a decent amount. So it'll be interesting to see how he does with that. But when it just comes down to being a good defender, someone who can hold his own, someone who's proven in the playoffs right now, which is huge as well, still has a little bit of shot creation issues, but Luka is going to get you some good shots regardless. So you take the good with the bad, and there's a lot of good with John Collins. So I would be absolutely happy for the Mavericks if they got him. And then another guy who they could go after, completely different in terms of the age spectrum, Kyle Lowry. The old savvy veteran Kyle Lowry. No offense to Jalen Brunson, but if you go from Jalen Brunson being your second best creator to Kyle Lowry, you take that every single day of the week. A couple of short kings there, a couple of the short kings, but one's probably a little bit more of a king in Kyle Lowry. I mean, he's still got it. 17 and 7 this season, 40% from 3. Think back to the playoffs, which is what we always need to think towards because this is a team that will make the playoffs with Luka Doncic. There's no doubts about that. As long as he stays healthy, fingers crossed, and Porzingis and all of those guys stay healthy enough during the regular season, this team will make the playoffs. It's about raising your ceiling in the playoffs and having guys that can step up. Think back to Lowry's last playoff series against Boston, just before the Eastern Conference Finals, the Eastern Conference Semis. Lowry ended up averaging 26 and 6. Decent efficiency, but he had some big moments. At the end of the day, he had a couple of huge games against Boston where he was the best player on the court, a court that had Tatum, Brown, Anunoby, Siakam, all of those guys. Lowry stepped up. Also during this season, during the regular season, you saw games where he was dropping 30. He was having 10 to 12 assists. Like, he still got it. I don't see how Lowry is not going to be a huge impactful player for Dallas if they were to somehow sign him. Finally taking some burden off Luka, whether Luka's on the floor and he can rest a little bit, play a little bit of off-ball, work on those things, or whether he's off the floor and Lowry can run that second unit or just run the team while Luka's off the floor. It would be huge regardless. Kyle Lowry brings in a lot of creation and it fixes a lot of the issues that came up in the playoffs when Luka wasn't on the floor and when he wasn't contributing to literally every single point and every single assist. And then defensively as well, which is important to note with all of these guys defensively because that is their biggest issue. I don't think their offense is foolproof by any means, and you see in the playoffs when Luka isn't doing everything, their offense can come unstuck. So offensively, it's still important to improve, but defensively as well, you need guys that aren't slouches. Kyle Lowry definitely isn't. He can guard smaller guys. He makes sense on that team. So I like the idea of Kyle Lowry. And then I think those guys are the two best options. Kawhi Leonard as well. Yeah, I'll just mention his name, but sorry, Mavericks fans, I don't see it happening. I will be happy to be proven wrong. That would be an absolutely dynamic partnership with Luka and Kawhi. I would love to see it, but I don't see it happening. I see him staying in LA. And then looking at the guys probably just below that range, you've got the likes of Jared Allen, who could become available as a restricted free agent if the Cavs were to get Evan Mobley. They've already said Evan Mobley is someone they'd be looking to get. He fits their team. Jared Allen could definitely become available. Spencer Dinwiddie can also provide some creation. 20-6 kind of guy. Doesn't have the same kind of off-ball gravity as Kyle Lowry. Not the same kind of shooter. He doesn't fit as well as Lowry by any means, which is why Lowry would be at my topper end. And obviously Lowry has that playoff experience, but Dinwiddie could still provide some kind of creation. Tim Hardaway Jr. could come back. He's someone, obviously, that has proven himself to be good, not great, but good. DeMar DeRozan could be an interesting one. Obviously, he's got some extra playmaking, lacks the shooting, not a great defender, but his playmaking is there, his shot creation is there. If Luka's on the bench, he can definitely run the second unit while he's off the floor, so you have those things, but when they're all on the floor together, defensively, you don't exactly improve there, and then also spacing-wise, the lanes are getting a little bit more clogged with Porzingis. What's he going to do? What's DeRozan going to do? Few question marks over that. If you're looking for a couple of guys that could genuinely make a big difference to this team, I look at John Collins, I look at Kyle Lowry for different reasons. Collins probably shores you up a little bit more defensively. Kyle Lowry, leadership is a little bit of a cliche kind of thing to say, but he brings leadership. He brings that veteran presence. People talked about it. I think it was Tim McMahon talked about the fact they didn't really have that locker room voice. Luka was kind of asked to be that guy in just his third year. So Lowry comes in immediately. He sets the tone there. He sets the standard. Also provides some really nice creation and just fits really well alongside Luka Doncic in that Jalen Brunson mold, except a lot better. No offense to big Jalen Brunson, one of my favorite role players, but that's just the facts. Didn't even mention their head coaching. Sorry. Yeah, they hired Jason Kidd, fired Rick Carlisle, or mutually agreed to part ways. Donnie Nelson's gone. So if you stayed to the end of the video, that's my thoughts on that. Have a good day. Bye.